whole new level of information science that Nick Short, who's on our team, has been using this term N of 1, but everybody is an N of 1 when it comes to genomics. And we sequence several sperm cells. No two sperm cells are alike. No two egg genomes are alike. That's why it comes out different every time. And so what's standard for medical practice is looking up these tables and what a normal value is meaningless when it comes down to you. Larry Page, the head of Google, said if we eliminated all cancer, it only changes the average lifespan by 3.5 years. But averages are meaningless if it's your lifespan, right? And that's what N of 1 is about, and that's what this information is going to change. Greg now knows he has this risk of Parkinson's disease. He can start to watch out for it and study changes. I did this with Alzheimer's disease. What's happening at the forefront of this area? Whatever people are susceptible to, they're going to be much more attentive to. And even help drive new treatments associated with things. So the N of 1 is probably the most important concept.
So you mentioned earlier, one of you mentioned microbiome, the metabolome. How is that, epigenetics, pharmacogenomics, and so on, going to be all integrated? And how is it going to affect this information that we're going to have?
If I can take this first. All these different areas are sub-disciplines of science. And they they have different meetings, so the people who study the microbiome go to microbiome meetings. The people who measure the chemicals in the bloodstream go to these metabolome meetings. They don't care what your genome is, they don't care what your microbiome is, It has started, I was driven by my early years here at UCSD. Early 70s was the era of cyclic AMP. Some of you guys remember this, where every paper in the scientific literature was some key physiological event in the human body driven by cyclic AMP going up or down. And I said, there has to be more to life than this. And so we're attempting now to integrate all these levels of information. As I said, the technology is just at the threshold, and the computers are just at the threshold for trying to do this. And that's what we have to do. We have to integrate knowledge. And there's no better place to do that in San Diego. This is where the original multidisciplinary programs came out. People actually talk to each other across the mesa. And so integrating these disciplines, integrating all this different data is key. We should be able to predict from your genome which microbes you're going to have, which diseases you're susceptible to in terms of infectious disease. And there's an argument amongst the people who measure proteins versus chemicals. The people who measure chemicals say they can predict what the proteome is going to be because these are the metabolites. And the people who measure proteins say, well, we know what the chemicals are going to be because here's what's there. But we'll find out what's actually important. We work as integrative systems. We don't work on just our microbiome. Sometimes these things take more or less significance, but that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to use it to put it all together.
David, just to add though, I spent my career at General Electric before I came out to San Diego, and in the diagnostic imaging field, if you go back into the early 70s, late 60s, there was basically only an X-ray machine. And you had radiologists out there, and yet they weren't that important, and there weren't that many of them. The rise of the radiologist, of that subspecialty, was primarily driven by the technology of the CAT scan, of the MRI, of the PET scan, And all of that sophisticated imaging system required an integrator and a human to look at the images and then translate it, again, just to a doctor, right? Because the doctor ultimately then was who the radiologist was talking to. It may be a computer, and I want to be respectful of that, but my sense is for a while in our healthcare system, somebody, a human, whether it's the pathologist or a genetic counselor, somebody's going to have to be the integrator of all this information. And I think we're going to see the healthcare subspecialty change in some way to handle it.
I think from a technology perspective, whether you're trying to measure the microbiome or the epigenetics,